everybody to coming to our webinar today on how to become a surrogate. Me and Ashley are from SurrogateFirst. I just want to let everybody know that this session is going to be recorded, and please leave questions. We would love to answer your questions at the end of our webinars. We do webinars bi-weekly, and so our next webinar coming up is going to be what to expect in a match meeting. So we hope you guys stay tuned for that. And let's get right into our webinar today. And so I am Jasenia, and I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I am a former surrogate. I've been a surrogate one time. I'm actually 6 months postpartum now. I love to teach people about surrogacy, and I work as a surrogacy educator at SurrogateFirst.
Perfect. And I'm Ashley. I'm one of the directors at SurrogateFirst. I oversee the intake department. So surrogate, parent information, education, screening, matching, the whole 9 yards. And I am 3 months postpartum with my fourth surrogacy, third for the same family, but fourth in general. So I just love everything surrogacy. And I'm so excited to start this process of sharing how to become a surrogate.
Yes. So this is a little bit of information about our agency. So me and Ashley, we come from SurrogateFirst. We work throughout the whole country, but we're based in Los Angeles, California. We were established in 2018, and we have a team of 15 across 8 states. So we're all over the map. We're in Nevada, California, Florida, Georgia. We're all over. But one thing that's special about our agency is we have a match guarantee. No match. You don't have to pay any fee with us, and that's something that we have at our agency. And we also have 100% pre-qualified surrogates. So we review their medical records, we do psychological evaluations, full drug panels, and background checks on all of our surrogates. So you're making sure that you're matched with the perfect one for your family.
And then on the surrogate side, we have monthly support groups. We have a health and wellness program that starts from the time you sign with our agency all the way through the fourth trimester. We've got a surrogate retreat. We have education courses. We have all different kinds of supports. Along with having low, our case managers manage just a lower amount of cases so that they can be able to give that attention and care to their surrogates as they're going through the process. So I'd say that's kind of what drew me and why we created SurrogateFirst the way we did. We really want to make sure that we, obviously, help and support parents, but also our surrogates. So I am so excited to be able to share a little bit more of how to become a surrogate.
Yes. So a few things that we're going to be covering today are the steps to becoming a surrogate, some of the surrogacy requirements, surrogacy responsibilities, and more information that we'll be sharing with you guys today. We really want to dive deep into all the qualifications and why they're important and things to consider when you're considering becoming a surrogate. So first, we're going to talk about why are the surrogacy requirements important. So to summarize everything, the surrogacy requirements are important to protect the intended parents, to protect the surrogates and her health, and also to protect, sorry, I can't speak, surrogacy professionals. So I was trying to say surrogacy professionals such as attorneys, agencies, lawyers, clinics. We definitely want to keep everybody protected when it comes to surrogacy arrangements.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that as a surrogate, we are putting our lives at risk. I mean, every pregnancy can have different complications. And so we as surrogates have to be mothers first. And we would never want something to happen to you where you couldn't care for your children or you would no longer be here. And so these requirements, while they may seem ridiculous to some of us because maybe we don't match the requirements, but we had great pregnancies, it's important to understand that there are differences with IVF pregnancies, with surrogacy, with the medications that we're using to have a successful IVF. So it's important to understand too with those requirements, why they're put in place. Number one is to protect you as a surrogate. It's super important to make sure that we're giving you the best chance of having a successful pregnancy. The other side of it is with the intended parents, many have dealt with lots of losses, or they have, it's a very time-consuming, emotional, and financial risk that they're putting in to hopefully grow their family. And so we want to make sure to minimize the risk to their baby too. And so, yeah, the requirements are very important. Did you meet all the requirements when you were looking to surrogacy, or did you have to work on anything?
So I met all of the requirements, but I know I get so many questions about the requirements every day in my inbox. They're just like, why is this a requirement? Why is this requirement? I don't understand. I've had perfect pregnancies. Why am I unable to be a surrogate? But it's like we really want to make sure that you guys are staying safe. That's the thing at the end of the day. We don't want to take a mother away from her family. We don't want you to do this if it's going to put you at risk in any way. But yeah, so I met all the requirements. I was extremely nervous when signing up to be a surrogate because even though I read all the requirements, I was just like, what if something happens and then I'm not able to? So I was always nervous the whole time when I was signing up.
So I actually didn't. I got denied when I first tried to apply because I didn't know what the requirements were. It took me like 6 months to a year to meet all of the requirements in order to be a surrogate.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to do this for a friend or close family member, friend, and so she was looking at this. We weren't sure how it was going to work out for ourselves. So I was like, hey, let me go try to be a surrogate with an agency. I can learn the process. We can see if I would be a good candidate to help you with your family. And so I went on to agencies and I was denied. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is it that's wrong with me? I had my own baby. Like, well, no, my BMI was one of those things.
Mhm.
And so I had to lose like 30 to 40 pounds. It was again 9 years ago, but I knew I had to lose a lot of weight. I had to change my lifestyle, exercising, eating habits, just to make sure that I was like as safe as I could be. My children were older, so I went out and like had to check if my records were still available. So it was definitely a commitment for me, but in the end, like there's no harm in getting myself healthier, whether or not I was going to be a surrogate. So it worked out, but even if I wasn't being able to be a surrogate, I'm sure my body appreciated me getting healthy.
Yes, that's amazing that you did that just so you can become a surrogate. Because most people might read the requirements and be like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm fine how I am. But it's really amazing that you went that far to become a surrogate for somebody.
Yeah, definitely. Would you like to share a little bit about some of the requirements, like the basic ones that you see, and
Yes,
maybe a
yes.
little explanation about what that looks like? Because in order to become a surrogate, we kind of need to match the requirements.
Yes. So there are a lot of different requirements, but some of the basic ones are being between 21 and 40 years old. And this varies from agency to agency and clinic to clinic. So some agencies might have different requirements than these, but like also your body mass index, or you're also known as your BMI, has to be between 18 and 32. And I know this is because sometimes when you're going through the IVF procedures and stuff, it might not be a chance of higher success with a higher BMI. So that's why they want you to be in this medium range of BMIs from 18 to 32. So you have to be a US citizen, a legal resident, or a legal immigrant. So you just have to be legal here in the United States. You can't travel from other countries to the United States to become a surrogate, because I get asked that a lot. You have to do surrogacy in basically your home country. And you currently can't be receiving any government financial support, such as food stamps, Medicaid, anything like that, because it's really important to be financially stable when going into something like surrogacy.
Well, and it also can affect the parent's parentage, right? So we don't want it to appear that there was coercion, someone was taken advantage of because maybe their socioeconomic status. And so we want to make sure that everyone is going into it educated, and that the courts are going to see that that the person who's a surrogate was not taken advantage of in this aspect. I have uploaded, I don't know if you can see, but I did put up the requirements for you. It is important to note these are SurrogateFirst requirements. And so while every agency has different requirements, there is what's called the standard, like ASRM, which is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine standards. And so theirs will be a little bit more, so like 21 to 45 or 44, I believe. So they do have different, but these are basically the same. I'd say about 80% of our requirements follow exactly the ASRM guidelines. Some are a little bit more stricter because of the clinics we work with on a regular basis.
Yes. Yeah. So it's important, like, to understand the requirements, just because I'm losing my track of thought. So let me get back into it. So it's important to have a healthy reproductive history. You have to have at least one child to be a surrogate. You can't be a surrogate without having a child before. So having a healthy pregnancy, no major complications when you give birth. And that just goes back to wanting to protect you. We don't want you becoming a surrogate if you have preeclampsia, severe gestational diabetes, anything that's going to put a risk to your life. And also, you have to be willing to go doing medications, all the injections that we have to take as a surrogate. I know there might be people out there that are terrified of needles. So that's something that you definitely want to consider when becoming a surrogate, that you're going to have to do 1 needle a day, maybe 2 needles a day for like up to 3 months or 4 months. It's a long commitment to the medications. So that's something that you want to consider when becoming a surrogate. Are you willing to learn to take the medications? Are you willing to inject yourself or have a partner help you at home?
Yeah. And if you have any questions about the actual requirements for SurrogateFirst, you can reach out to us. We'll be able to share more information. If you have questions about what the, any of that, just reach out to SurrogateFirst. We'll answer to the best of our ability. I get it and understand that some of them may seem ridiculous to us if we've had safe pregnancies and no complications. But we do want to be able to educate and make sure that we all understand that. What are the steps to becoming a surrogate?
So the steps to becoming a surrogate. So the first thing I would say would be doing research. It is highly recommended before becoming a surrogate to do your own research, because I can't tell you how many surrogates I talk to that are in the beginning stages that don't realize everything that goes into it. They don't realize all the medical appointments that you have to do for IVF, that you're going to have to travel to the clinics of the parents, that so many different things, legal contracts that you're going to have to read and go over with a lawyer. So the first thing I would say is doing your research. The second thing I would say is doing your application and qualifying, checking all the requirements. So when you're doing your research, you're probably going to stumble across the requirements and see if you're eligible for surrogacy. So applying and qualifying, seeing if you meet the requirements, and doing an application with your agency. And then the next step is getting your evaluation. So your medical clearance, your records reviewed by the agency. And also a psychological evaluation is done by your agency as well. And then finally, you can go on to the matching process where you can match with the family that you're going to help.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of responsibilities. We need to make sure as surrogates, in order to become a surrogate, you want to make sure that it works well with your life that you currently have. So making sure you have the availability with your job and your family has a support system. And, so there's quite a few things to look at, and we'll kind of go over those too as we're moving forward through the process.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the physical health requirements to be a surrogate. So we touched on these a little bit, but some of the basic ones, again, are being from 21 to 40 years old, your body mass index being from 18 to 32, having a healthy reproductive history with no major complications, having a child, and not having any serious illnesses. I have many people that reach out to me that say, oh, I have a heart condition, or I have a thyroid condition, or I have this kind of condition. And usually you would have to get okays from those doctors to be able to do surrogacy, but some major illnesses are like an automatic disqualification.
Yeah, and then on the other physical side, if you're looking to how to become a surrogate and you're looking if surrogacy is right for you, you want to make sure to understand the process. So like Jaseni was saying before, there are shots, intramuscular, subcutaneous shots, there's vaginal suppositories, there's medications. There are more appointments with surrogacy. So you've got a medical screening, you've got transfer, but you've also got outside monitoring appointments. Your first trimester, you're going to the doctor a lot more. You're under the care of usually an IVF clinic, and then you're released to your doctor. And so there are more. And then technically IVF is considered in some states, and depending on your care, high risk pregnancy. And so you may have to see an MFM. And so making sure physically that you can go through that. 2 to 5% of the time an embryo splits. So you want to make sure like, okay, am I going to be prepared to carry twins? Do I have that support? Is my body going to be okay for that? When we're using those IVF medications, it changes. So what we're doing is we're stopping ovulation, then we're tricking our bodies into thinking that it's going to, the embryo is not an outside like evil force, right? Like, and again, I'm not a doctor, so like, don't quote me on this and come for me. But your body needs to accept, and then you need to create the progesterone and the estrogen. And then once your body's created it, you can be weaned off your meds. So there's a lot of physical sides of that. And so it's important to understand, can you handle that? Are you prepared for that? Because it's a lot harder than just, oops, I got pregnant. So,
And let me tell you, when I was doing my medications, like, since the wait of surrogacy is so long, I believe my process was 8 months before I was pregnant. And while I was doing that, I was so excited to start my medications. I was dying to start my medications because we're just so excited to get to the next step of the process and finally be pregnant. So I started my medications, it's fine. But then a few weeks go by and then your body gets sore in the areas where you're injecting. It's not as easy to do the injections every day, measuring them out, taking them at certain times. Like, you have to be really responsible when it comes to taking your medications. And then every clinic is very different with their medication protocols. So you might not have the same protocol as another girl at a different clinic. I remember I had to take my injections to up to almost 14 weeks of pregnancy. And I was so tired of taking the medications every day because my clinic was very strict. But I see many surrogates, they're able to stop their medications at 10 weeks or 12 weeks. So just be prepared because you don't know how your journey will exactly look.
I muted myself because I work from home and you never know what kind of crazy kid or animal is going to run through the house.
Right.
Let me talk. So next side of that physical would be mental health. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, so mental health is something extremely important to consider when becoming a surrogate. Like, we do psychological evaluations on the surrogate and their partner if applicable. And you want to make sure that if you're wanting to qualify to be a surrogate, that you have no history of mental illness. This is something very important, and you can't be on any antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications for 12 months prior to applying to be a surrogate, because we just want to make sure that you're mentally prepared for this process, because it might be really hard for different people. Everybody reacts to things differently, and we don't want to cause any problems in your life.
Yeah. Also on top of it, surrogacy is stressful. I don't know if you felt it, but like, while I would never change my journeys for anything, and I love the experience and I love being a surrogate, I was way more like stressed out carrying somebody else's baby. And so that was nerves there. Also the injections and IVF, I did pretty good the first 3 journeys. I felt like I was pretty balanced on my hormones. But this last one, was on Lupron again. I've been on it 3 times. I was so highly like irritated with my husband and my family. And so having that on top of like, potentially having some mental health issues, it can be very stressful. It's stressful in itself. And I think that there's a big misconception, or there's, in society about mental health, and having anxiety, depression, bipolar, different schizophrenia, all of these different items. And there's no shame in needing medications to control that so that you can have a happy and functioning life. There's no shame in going through situational depression and anxiety. There's no shame if you're just, hormonally, there's an imbalance in your system. So like, I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm less than because I don't qualify for surrogacy. No, these are put in place because.
Oh, I'm not sure what happened. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. Just give us 1 second. But I want to continue to talk about the mental health, because when I was a surrogate, for me, I had so much anxiety throughout the whole process. And since you're carrying a baby that's not yours, you don't understand until you're there. I feel like I had so much more anxiety and things with a baby that wasn't mine. With my pregnancies, I didn't think of the risk of a miscarriage. I didn't think of all these different things. But since you're putting all this pressure on yourself to be a surrogate for somebody else, you're trying to make their dreams come true. And then you get anxious. So it's definitely normal.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I definitely was worried too, going into it with like, this family is counting on me, and then there was stresses of like extra appointments. And I can't imagine if someone had to go on bed rest or there was complications with the pregnancy. And so making sure that, if you want to become a surrogate, that you have tools in your toolbox for, when you're dealing with stresses or anxieties or just, worldly things that are going on. I was a surrogate during 2020 when COVID hit hard. And so a lot of unknowns. And so making sure you have a good mental health support, that you have the tools that you need to kind of go through this, a support team that can help you. So yeah, there's a lot of different things, but really, looking at this, and at the end of the day, with your physical, your mental, the responsibilities, all of this, you need to ask yourself, am I here to help a family, or is there something else driving me to want to become a surrogate that could put another family at risk, could put my family at risk? So just really understanding that, the risks are very minimal, but we always want to make sure that you're discussing these, that you're educated and you feel confident moving forward.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is like to at least be aware of the risks, because you don't want something happening to you and it's like totally unexpected. And now we're going to talk about like a lifestyle. So like the lifestyle requirements for being a surrogate. So having a stable home, not moving from place to place, and being financially stable is extremely important. Being a non-smoker, living in a non-smoking home, because who wants their baby to be grown in a home with smoke? Of course not. And then also having support of your family and your friends around you, I think is really important. I didn't realize how much support I needed until I jumped into the process. And then there was times like I wanted to talk to somebody. I wanted my family to support me. I wanted them to. I had so much support. It was overwhelming at times, but I could see how it could be bad if somebody didn't have the same support that I did. Okay, so some of the surrogate responsibilities. So we touched on some of these before, but going to many doctor's appointments. There are so many doctor's appointments you have to go to that are outside of regular pregnancy doctor's appointments. I remember when I was doing my medications, I would have to go get my blood drawn randomly. They would be like, okay, go get your blood drawn tomorrow and go to get an ultrasound here in 2 days. And then I just had to figure it out, get my kids to be looked after, go to my appointments, get ready for my transfer. And then also the strict medical regimen when it comes to doing your injections, it's very strict. So when you're starting off your medications, your doctor is probably going to tell you have to start at exactly 1 p.m. or exactly 10 a.m. in the morning to do your medications. And it's definitely important to follow the protocol. And then there are times that you will have to be abstinent with your partner, because it's really important to follow your doctor's directions during this time. So abstinence. And then there's also travel restrictions. So for me, I was really lucky in my surrogacy because I got to travel up into 33 weeks of pregnancy. But many surrogates can't travel past 20 weeks in pregnancy, and they have to stay within 2 hours of their hospital. So that is definitely something to consider. And then also like having open communication with your agency, with your intended family, with the doctors is extremely important. And then it's also a long-term commitment.
Yeah, definitely. Surrogacy can take 18 months, 2 years when you're going through the process of screening. So are you committed to that time? You also want to understand too that, if you're single or in a relationship, like she was saying, abstaining, if you're single, your partner, if you found, Mr. Right during that process, would have to do background checks, drug panels. They would have to, there could be documentations that they have to sign. Also, if you are not committed to one person, understanding the parents and the risks to them. So everyone would have to be, checked. And so sometimes, parents will request abstinence. That's not required, but just understanding how that can affect the pregnancy. You would never want to be pregnant, with someone else's child, let alone your own child or, and someone else's child, and then contract an STD. So just keeping in mind those understandings. 85% of miscarriages happen in that first trimester. So are you okay? And are you accepting of the responsibilities that you may have to go on pelvic rest or bed rest, or there may be, complications that will cause you to alter your life even more. So understanding those things when you're becoming a surrogate is super important. Again, the chance of that is very minimal, but making sure that you understand those risks are going to be definitely important. communication too with your agency. Can you share a little bit about communicating with your agency?
Yeah, so communicating with your agency is extremely important when it comes to like moving locations. Even if you're moving down the street, you need to give your agency your updated address. If for some reason there's a problem with your insurance, you need to communicate that to your agency. If there's problems with your intended parents or lawyer or anything, you should be communicating all of these things with your agency so they're kept in the loop and they can help problem solve.
Definitely. Now it's not required, but it is recommended to have a healthy like diet and exercise and things like that. Again, you and your parents are going to match with like-mindedness, right? So some parents request that, but unless that's your normal life, you don't have to do too much, changing. But it is important. They have found studies that what the woman who's carrying, whether that is a biological mother or gestational carrier, it does affect the child's chances of like obesity later in life, along with, genetics and things like that. But there have been studies. Same thing with stress while in utero. There are many studies. So making sure your life and the tools you have are to help you with as much as possible in this crazy world, a peaceful pregnancy. Are you going to be able to handle that? Because that additional stress, and if a woman is under like trauma and duress and stress, that actually goes into, in through the placenta, and those can affect the child too later in life. So it's important to understand that. You have to give up skydiving, horseback riding. Like, are you okay with like
Riding motorcycles?
I love diving, and the lack of oxygen is not able to be done. Like you can't go diving, you can't go spearfishing, you can't so making sure that you understand. When you're talking about travel restrictions, it's important to understand that these rules aren't in place just to be rules. With travel restrictions, your pre-birth order is normally drafted and accepted in the state that you are. And so exiting that state after the age of viability could mean that the parents risk their chance of parentage. If that state doesn't accept the pre-birth order, the other side of it is insurance. If your insurance doesn't cover you crossing state borders and you have an emergency, now that amount of money is going to fall on the parents. Maybe they're, the health of their baby, maybe they set up insurance in that state for baby. So really just understanding those risks too, and the responsibilities all around is important. And again, you have to communicate with your agency and the parents. So that's a lot more communication than you would do if you were just having your own child.
Yes. Okay. So I made it a point to message my intended parents after every single doctor's appointment because we didn't really have a schedule of when we would speak, but I made it a point to talk to them at least every time I had a doctor's appointment at minimum. We would talk outside of that, but that's something I did to keep the communication going and everything going smoothly.
So I'm going to share the next, let's see, resume share. Okay, can you see that? Is that the application?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's the application. So this is our surrogacy application. We have it right on surrogatefirst.com. I did write down a few things that I think it's important to remember when you're doing your application. So like being completely honest, I think is extremely important because we do go really deep when we're doing these applications. So we don't want something to come up in the future and find out that you lied and then it's going to mess up the whole process. And also having detailed medical information. So like the names of your doctors, the location, the phone number is something really important. So we're able to retrieve your medical records. Also communicating with the agency and asking questions because there might be some questions that you don't know the answer to on your application. So I would definitely communicate with your agency or your intake coordinator to help get your application completed.
Perfect. And now I know the screen said 3 to 5 minutes. That's your initial application. That's going to be the 20 most common requirements. And so fill that out. Then comes the huge application, right? And most agencies are going to have a save button where you can complete sections of it. It's going to ask for dear parent letters and everything. And like just anyone was saying, honesty is so important, right? Now, if you're honest with an agency, they can tell you, hey, that could be a problem or that wouldn't be a problem. What does happen is that could be something that's not that big of a deal or that parents are okay with or the clinics are okay with. But if it shows up in your medical records, background history, psychological evaluation, it can look like you withheld it. And then that's not honest. And we really need to have trust between the agency and the surrogate and trust between the parents and, the whole group of us. And so that can look bad. Now, I've had people disclose things. I'm like, not a big deal. Let's keep moving on, And so it's important to be honest about those items. And if for some reason you interview with an agency and they tell you, hey, look, we're not going to be able to move forward with you, please don't like head off to another agency and then change up your application.
Yeah.
Please understand that this is about your safety and the parent safety and the baby's safety. And so it's really important that sometimes we want things that aren't the best for our lives. And so sometimes an agency has to make that hard decision, even though there's not enough surrogates. We have to make that decision to put your needs and your life ahead of us creating a match.
Yes, exactly.
And I'll share my screen with you guys. There we go. Okay, back to the application and the next step.
So this is just the conclusion of everything that we talked about in the webinar. So from your physical and mental readiness, doing your applications, doing your research, and just making a well-informed decision before just joining surrogacy. So while we appreciate like everybody that wants to become a surrogate, we understand that everybody is not able to. So that we're just like concluding everything and just take everything that we're saying into consideration when becoming a surrogate.
Definitely. It's important to understand, that we're just here to give information. And again, we are not the end all be all. We are not the only requirements. There are different variations of this throughout the surrogacy field. And so we're just bringing you the best of our knowledge and our experience and our agency. And so, please understand that if you want dialogue, we'd love to communicate. We'd love to go more into detail and help you with our how to become a surrogate. Yeah, we can do the basic meeting, right? Initial application, interview, screening, matching, and everything. But we want to dive a little deeper in so that you can have these, communication and this talk about what are the steps. A lot of people with the responsibilities. And on the health side, having those higher risks of things being, possibly happening. And so at the end of this, if you feel like, hey, like I'm okay with the responsibilities, I'm okay with the risks, I can definitely handle this and I'm ready to get started, then like we would love to work with you. We would love to talk more about this process to start the application, to help you through the screening and finding the right family. At SurrogateFirst, we were able to help almost 100 families last year. And we've really added an amazing team to our agency. We definitely have built out this culture of support. And it's been really amazing to see over the last 6 months, just the transition. And so we really are excited. You can join our support group when you're a surrogate with us, the health and wellness program, meet with a mentor. We're all about educating. If that means at the end of this, you say, Ashley, I'm not interested, this seems like way too much work. We're okay with that because I'd rather you move forward educated and 100% committed to surrogacy than dive in and be like, oh, what did I get myself into?
Yep. Yes, and thank you everybody for joining. If you want my contact information, my name is Jasenia Latore and I'm at jasenia@surrogatefirst.com and my phone number is 470-907-9957.
And I'm Ashley Mareko. And so that's Ashley, the plain old Janeway, ASHLEY @surrogatefirst.com. And my direct line is 424-567-3703. We'll be doing these every 2 weeks. We've been doing a good job, Jasenia. She's the heart behind getting us out on these webinars and educating and supporting. And so I really do appreciate you so much. And we're SurrogateFirst.
Yes.
I love you.
Yes. And I want to invite you guys to our next webinar. It's going to be on August 30th and it's what to expect in a match meeting. And I really hope that I'll see you guys there.
Oh, I'm excited. You guys have a beautiful day. Thank you for joining us with our SurrogateFirst webinars. We will be uploading these onto YouTube. Also, when you end this webinar, there is going to be a survey that'll get emailed to you. Please be honest with us. We want to improve our webinars. We want to make sure that we're reaching and this is valuable. So we just thank you guys for everything. We thank every surrogate that's willing to become a surrogate, even if you don't qualify. Thank you for having a heart to help heal families that are struggling with losses and not able to have their own family grow. And you're giving them so much hope. And so we just appreciate all that you do. And we look forward to helping support you through your surrogacy with Surrogate First.
Yes. Thank you guys. I hope to see you guys in 2 weeks. All
2
right,
weeks.
guys. Bye.